So pleased to have my colleague and dear friend, Dr. Gary Stager, with me today. How are you, Gary?
Good. Great to see you. Thanks for having me.
Sure, sure. I am the CEO of RoboFun, and to give you a little bit of background, we are located at 102nd and Broadway for the next April, May, June, 3 months, and then we're moving to an incredible space on 65th and West End Avenue on the Upper West Side of Manhattan as well. For these 3 months, however, we have a very active 3 months of right now we're in spring break is tomorrow. And for the next 2 days of this week and all of next week, we have spring break morning, afternoon, full day for 3 to 13-year-olds. And then the
Cool.
following week on the 17th, we have after school starting. If you're watching this and you work with schools or your kids go to schools, we also do a lot of field trips. We also do birthday parties, private lessons. So go to robofun.org to see more about us or call us at 212-245-0444. And my social media person's always like, get them to like us. So if you like what you hear, do a thumbs up on one of the platforms that we all use. The last thing I want to say while Gary is returning is this new space. We are on the second floor now, but where we're going is storefront. And I am in the process of renovating it, and it's gorgeous. I'm in shock that in my lifetime I am putting this beautiful place together for children. So come visit us at 110 West End Avenue. After the 1st of July, we're officially moving on the 1st of July, and kids will be in there. The camp's starting on the 17th of July, but we'll do a lot of one-dayers in July and early July as well. All right, so I have finished my spiel about RoboFun just in time to see Gary's entire face, not just half of it, which was a minute ago. And Gary and I have known each other, I really think maybe 30 years before my son, who just turned 25 yesterday.
Wow.
And Gary does amazing work. And every couple of months, Gary, who's on the West Coast, and I connect because we have very similar philosophies about learning and nurturing children. And he's always challenging me to think about things differently. And he can challenge you too, because he's got these amazing, cool workshops coming up that unfortunately I can't go to, but I wanted to let the larger community know more about them. So Gary, what do you have coming up? And I will put things in the chat. We didn't talk about this so that people listening could, so give me URLs, et cetera, as we talk.
Great. So we're running workshops on April 14th and 15th for educators and parents and people who look like educators or parents, called the Invent to Learn microbit workshop. And the microbit is a little $15 to $20 brain board that allows for a wide variety of computational and physical computing projects, robotics, engineering, that comes out of the UK, and there's about 4 million of them in circulation now. And we'll be running workshops in how to use those for learning in the classroom as the basis for project-based learning for STEM and STEAM. April 14th in Jersey City, April 15th in Manhattan. We just ran one in Los Angeles, ran a couple in the DC area last month. And participants are getting a Microbit Go kit, which is everything you need to get started with these projects for you and your students or your children, as well as 2 books. The book I assembled during the pandemic, 20 Things to Do with a Computer, Forward 50, which is a collection of essays by 4 dozen or so thinkers, inventors, innovators, educators, researchers.
If I can jump in, it's an amazing book of ideas and thoughtfulness. So after Gary, you tell us all about this. We need to talk about your past and how you.
Yeah, sure.
So
Sure. And then the other book, which is actually the inspiration for the workshop and everyone's getting who participates in the workshop, is the Invent to Learn Guide to the Microbit. We found 2 Dutch educators from the Netherlands who are doing incredibly clever projects with the microbits, stuff that really makes you smile. That, lots of whimsy, but also an awful lot of science and math and engineering and design and problem solving, and asked them to write a book for us. And we spend a lot of time really trying to craft something that'll help either kids or teachers, or kids and teachers, really get the most out of this incredibly powerful, low cost piece of technology that you
Right.
can use forever in multiple ways and have multiple ones communicate with one another. A lot of the books, particularly around using electronics and computation and such, particularly for educators, if they even exist at all. There aren't a lot of microbit books, even though there's 4 million microbits in circulation.
Yeah.
The books go from turning it on to, oh shit, in about 2 pages.
Okay.
And there's never any middle. And I think
Oh, you're saying
it's
all
a
the other books. Are you saying not the book that
no,
you're doing?
not our book.
Okay.
And even a lot of the practice, we're in an age of hour of code. Everyone just sort of bobs along the surface, and they get their feet wet. But no one ever develops any kind of fluency. No one invents anything new. Kids don't start viewing the technology as a material with which they can make other things. And I find that really unfortunate. So we worked really hard to make sure that, full color book with lots of stuff to do, and
So would you
step
say,
by step with a coherent pedagogical philosophy
okay,
and
so I
consistent
just want to
framework.
jump in. Um, as a teacher, I was often tasked in August with, by the way, you're teaching 7th grade
Mhm.
this year. Would you
Yeah.
say, and that teacher, which was me 40 years ago, would be like, what do you mean I'm teaching computer science, digital learning? And the administrator would be, yep, that's what you're doing. Would this book help that person?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we did a couple things. One is you start working with the microbit immediately.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the books have 100 pages of blah blah before you actually do anything, if you ever get to do anything. Someone sent me the physical computing curriculum for a large urban district that you're well familiar with, and by the end of the school year, you're doing things like making an origami frog.
Okay,
So,
so
so,
tell us about what.
so there's not actually any computing involved, or there's very little. There's an awful lot of scope and sequences and tables in multiple colors and lots of vocabulary acquisition that one
Right.
aspires to, but there's not a lot of computing. And so we think the book can be used either as a project resource where you grab the project that looks like it connects to something that might interest your students or is connected to the curriculum in some way, or we think as a soup to nuts
Cool.
textbook.
All right. So what I didn't do, but because it's Gary Stager and you and I improv like this, is I didn't say show us a project. Do you have any projects hanging around your office, or can you
No.
describe a project? That would have been
Oh,
good.
there's it goes from making something that lights up and displays a smiley face to a rocket that measures the acceleration on its ascent and descent,
Okay.
with a
All right.
recycled Coke bottle and a foot pump.
All right.
There's data logging. There's data logging projects in it. Um, there's an entire chapter which I had a lot to do with on creating functions. In other languages, you might know them as procedures,
Mhm.
but the make code language, which is the kind of dominant language used for programming the microbit, even though the microbit could be programmed in a variety of languages, no one had documented this.
Mhm.
There is neopixels, which can come as a single LED that can change color, or you can get these large strips of them that you can create bright colored rainbow flashing projects very quickly and easily. No one had sort of bothered to document that in any way, shape, or form. There's puppetry, there's video games, there's little moving robots, there's a bed lamp that that not only turns on when the room gets dark, but has kind of a nice visual effect of kind of like a shadow kind of thing. So
For what age would
and
you say the book is good for? For teachers?
we're pitching fourth, eighth grade.
Okay. Okay.
But there's more computing in it. I mean, no high school student would be offended by it.
Okay.
And then there's in the appendices, we've got lots of extra resources and where to buy this, extra goodies, as well as there's a whole bunch of features built into MakeCode that I always forget about because I don't use them, but to create online tutorials and to embed your actual video in projects and how to share things in a variety of ways. There's this incredibly clever free web-based software that's being used that's not terrible, that for some inexplicable reason Microsoft has funded, called MakeCode. That's kind of the primary programming environment for the microbit. And in shaping the book, I tried to sort of drag that in a logo-like direction to the best of our ability. But
Okay.
like I mentioned the function chapter. We had some really prominent makers, people who, do lots of amazing things with fabrication equipment and microcontrollers, who sent us kind of private messages that said, "Huh, I never knew that function stuff. That's really useful."
That's
Because
great.
you can write a little bit of code and you can use it in other ways. So, one of the concerns that I have, one of the sort of epiphanies I had working with some kids online during the pandemic was, a lot of what we do with computers in the best educational scenarios is to ask the kids to think like the machine and then communicate their ideas to the computer, and then the computer plays out those ideas for you. And if what you see on the screen matches what you had in your imagination, then you're successful. If it doesn't, then you have to engage in some debugging processes. And it's a rich intellectual pursuit, and it's kind of the basis of the logo experience.
Okay.
Logo philosophy.
Okay, hold on. For our larger audience who may have no idea what you mean by the logo philosophy, which is something that Gary and I are very familiar, how would you describe that, Gary?
Logo is a programming language. It was the first programming language developed for children and learning in 1967. It's still in use. It's the grandfather of environments like Scratch. It's a procedural language,
What does that mean?
that you can create a collection of instructions and give them a name, and then use that name in service of other larger projects. It minimizes sort of the possibility for syntactical errors by having very, very consistent and limited syntax. But more importantly, it had at its core an idea of low threshold, high ceiling. That anyone can get started and do something quickly, and then it can continue to grow with you. That the degree of difficulty increases the better you get at it, the more fluency you develop in using the programming language. And the most famous aspect of Logo is the turtle, which was either a physical object or an object on the screen that, as you gave it mathematical instructions, it would move about in space and drag a pen. And that dragging of a pen would result in drawing. And those pictures and the drawing of pictures is something that's close to childhood. It's something kids are quite comfortable with, and created a context for exploring and expressing mathematical ideas.
Okay.
But the epiphany I had was, even in the best contexts, a lot of kids only get to the point where they're getting the turtle to reproduce their thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
And you could spend years exploring that. In fact, there was a new polygon that was discovered, and there's been mathematical papers written about it and published in the last couple of weeks. And around 1 a.m. last night, my partner Sylvie Martinez and I were thinking about the geometry of it and how we could communicate that to the turtle in a logo environment, and create an opportunity for little kids to be playing with something that's on the frontiers of mathematics, which is quite exciting. But the realization I had was that one of the reasons we use computers is to get them to work for us.
Yeah.
And there's this tipping point where we stop thinking for the computer and the computer starts thinking for us.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think kids ever get there, or very few kids ever get there. You know, the kids who have taught themselves JavaScript and whatever else on their own, that some of them might get there. But
So
the utility of computing is actually to amplify our abilities,
right.
and to to be a prosthetic device, as Seymour said,
So
and to do work for us.
for those of you who may not
Yeah,
know,
Seymour Papert, the father of educational computing, the person who invented Logo, MIT professor, mathematician, civil rights activist, educator.
yep. And sort of the grandfather of both of us, or father of both of
Mm-hmm.
us, are constructivists.
No, I'm a father.
Yeah,
We're both old.
yeah, we're getting old. I hate to say it, but we are. So, um,
Yeah.
so
So this has been this, and this not only happens with time and a sense, recognition on the part of the adults who are teaching the kids that this is, one, possible, and two, a reasonable objective.
and the desire of the teacher, and I would also say the right tools to get there.
Yeah. Well,
So
it's funny, if people who want to dismiss, Logo as a baby language, and my answer is always, well, I still use it. And in fact, I recently was using Logo to fact check ChatGPT,
ah, that's
which
pretty
a
good.
whole other discussion. But it turns out that this thing that apparently revolutionized all of education and will destroy humanity over Christmas vacation, um, isn't very good at second grade arithmetic. And I asked it about an old Marilyn Burns classroom math problem, and it understood, it knew what it was. It fully understood. It fully explained the algorithm. And then when I asked it to do the math, it confidently generated all sorts of garbage that my BS detector went up, and I thought, that ain't right.
Mhm.
And that's largely a function of all the programming I've done over the years, of thinking like the machine and being able to sort of look for patterns quickly and such.
Right.
And so um, the easiest thing for me to do was to write a programming Logo that would check whether its calculations were correct. And it turned out that they weren't. And then I would tell it that it was wrong, and it would thank me and be quite solicitous, and then it would give me more junk. Um,
So for those of
anyway, so yeah.
right. So we're taking a slight tangent to bring us back. Two things. What version of Logo do you use for those people listening who might do you a turtle?
Well, I use Turtle Art a great deal when I teach kids and introduce teachers to computing. I
Mhm.
don't think there's any better environment for getting started. But it wouldn't do the kind of work that I just described. So I was using Lynx, which is the web-based version of what used to be called MicroWorlds. It's in the lineage of Logo programming languages,
Okay.
and it's really good. But there's things that are missing from it that are maddening to me, and
Okay.
and it's largely because I'm a power user, but I'm only a power user in the way, to the extent that kids used to be able to do these things in the late 1980s.
Right.
Um, and because they've sort of atrophied over time, the developers have let them go.
Right.
Um, but I'm sort of still remarkably consistent in what I would like kids to be able to do,
Right.
and all of my work is around creating the conditions for teachers to gain that level of confidence to create those opportunities for kids as well.
All right. So that's a really nice segue into what you're going to do on the 14th in Jersey City and the 15th in Manhattan. Um, so tell us for those. So let's say I'm a teacher out there and I'm like, I want to sign up for this right now. Where do I go?
Inventtolearn.com/NYC.
Inventtolearn.com/NYC.
Yep.
Okay.
So it's in the spirit of all of the work that I do, and of our gigantic Constructing Modern Knowledge Summer Institute, which is July 11th to 14th this year in Manchester, New Hampshire again, where we treat adults like they're competent and confident and creative and capable. Um, And the workshop format for the one day, um, we start by situating the microbit innovation and robotics and engineering and computation for kids in the historical tradition of the 20 things um, book that we mentioned, to give you a sense that we stand on the shoulders of giants, make the case for computing, make the case for computer science in children, and then throw people right into the deep end of the pool with some activities that um, I designed when someone tweeted, "Hey, I have to run an hour-long microbit workshop. What should I do?" And I
Mhm.
was feeling kind of cheeky and creative that day, and sat down and in 15 minutes crapped out this one pager with two sets of projects,
Mhm.
and it it's pretty good. Um, so that's an opportunity for people to sort of get their feet wet and for us to support them and find out where they are. Um, and then after that typically takes us to about lunch. Then we tackle some of the projects from the book, and I have a suitcase full of um, add-on boards and wires and sensors and LEDs and such for extending a microbit. Because one of the things that's really cool about this is it not only has a 5x5 display,
Mhm.
it has two buttons which could be triggered independently or together. It
Mhm.
has a temperature sensor, it has a light sensor, it has a microphone, it has a speaker, it has an accelerometer, so it knows that if it's tipped or flipped or thrown or tossed or dropped. And it has three digital or analog outputs that you can connect things to either with conductive thread or tape or a wire or alligator clips. And the architecture is such that, let me see if I can show you this. There's actually 25 little pins on the hardware, which means that a whole variety of add on accessories have been invented that this thing snaps into, that adds infinite functionality for controlling dozens of motors or pumps or
Right.
any kinds of sensors that you might want to connect to it. So it's this wonderful little micro world for exploring electronics and robotics and engineering in a form where the when computers are cheap as chips, um, you don't have to break a project apart every 37 minutes when the bell rings.
Right.
Kids can actually work on something for as long as it takes, and if they build something that's useful, they can leave it together.
And they can have
I should mention it also has radio in it, so you could use one microbit as a remote control for another one, or you could have a colony of creatures that communicate with one another, or you could send messages between them. Um,
Okay, wait. I
so
want
you know,
to
so,
let me jump in for a second. So if
yeah,
I'm a teacher listening to this, one of the things that I found, both running a company and prior to that being a computer teacher, is it's really important that you know what tools to use. So when you mention different motors and sensors, would you be advising people on what motors and sensors work well with the microbit?
yeah, that of course comes up in the workshop, and it's in the book as well.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, you can't get away from it anytime you introduce any kind of new technology, especially an expansive technology or expandable technology. You spend a lot of time talking about shopping,
Right.
and
You do.
um, and it's one of the reasons why we're giving everyone the Microbit Go kit, which is a microbit battery box, USB cable, batteries. And I should mention, um, in the
Do you
family
have one
workshops that I've
there? Do you have one there, Gary, that you could hold up? I'm
no,
sorry.
it's just a little box that this comes in. But
Okay.
and you can get club kits of these for you can get 10 in a club kit. Um, but what I wanted to say about that, which I think would be of interest to you, is I don't run nearly as many family workshops as you do. But not only now can kids create something like, I'll give you a concrete example. You put a microbit outside, it's constantly measuring the temperature, and there's a little robot that you built inside the classroom that tells you whether you should wear a sweater when you go out for recess.
I like that.
So you
I
can make something and you can leave it together,
Right.
right?
So I
Um,
used to do
and
work.
and and so now what I wanted to say about family workshops, just one more thing before I lose this idea, is when parents can see through the eyes and the hands and the screens of their kids what's possible, they want a new educational diet for their children. I think one of the the sources of the crises that we're facing now with education policy is parents got a really good look at what schooling was during the pandemic, and they
Right.
were unimpressed.
Right.
And their rage is not being
Channeled.
expended in productive ways, but the rage exists. Um, in the family workshops that I've done, where we've been able to give everyone a microbit kit to take with them, it's been a game changer. And so when you've got $20 worth of technology that you can add on to the cost of something and send everyone home with it, and the learning can continue after the workshop, it's quite exciting. This happened for the first time for me. I think, God, it's got to be 4 years now. 4 years ago in Australia, I ran a workshop, and we gave each of the families a Microbit Go kit. And I told this audience of elementary school kids, I'll be back 2 weeks from Thursday. If you remember to bring your Microbit kit, you can meet with me over lunch, and I'll show you some new tricks and answer your questions. And 100% of the kids showed up. But it was actually more than 100%, because they brought all of their friends who they'd been teaching, because they had the thing available to them.
Right.
So it's, I've been involved in one-to-one computing for 33 years, every kid having a laptop. And the fact that we now have a world in which all this is completely affordable, there's no excuses for it to not be part of every kid's life. And the fact that you can actually just give the stuff away with the cost of a class or a workshop is a real game changer. And it does, I mean, for all intents and purposes, it does as much, if not all, of what other robotics kits can do at a much higher price. The other kits have the advantage of everything in the box, and you don't have to scrounge for parts. But in our book, we use a lot of recycled materials and craft supplies and things like that to fill the gap.
Right. Well, for those people who are lucky enough to register, you still have more space on Saturday than on Friday, but you still have space in both.
Yeah, we hear all over the country that people can't get subs, so we're trying to do a Saturday workshop. So the Saturday Manhattan workshop is on the 15th. The 14th is in Jersey City.
Okay. All right. Gary, I am always fired up by talking to you. And we have to continue this, and I will be doing some sort of symposium in my new space, and I may drag you across the country for that.
Oh, absolutely.
And just a few more things. Gary, tell us where people can go to learn. You have a number of websites that have incredible information, and I'd love to put them up on the chat. What are they?
Invent to Learn, which is the website for our book and for a lot of our PD activities. This month is actually the 10th anniversary of the publication of Invent to Learn, which is kind of extraordinary, and it's still selling, and people still read it and use it, and it's been translated into 9 languages now, including Kyrgyz and most recently in Chinese. Constructing Modern Knowledge, which is my life's work. It's the summer institute that we run in Manchester, New Hampshire, 4 days of uninterrupted project work with an amazing faculty and a mountain of materials and remarkable guest speakers.
Constructingmodernknowledge.com.
Knowledge.com. And my personal website is professorgarystager.com if you want to know all about me. And
okay.
This all should be in one place, and my blog is stager.tv. TV.
Okay. Got it. All right. It's all on this chat. And I just want to, as always, thank you. And
my pleasure. Thanks for helping spread the word.
Sure. It's worth your time. You will learn a lot. So if you're free on the 14th and you're a teacher or a parent, a homeschool parent, this is an amazing resource for you.
14th and 15th.
Yep, of April. 2 weeks away. 2 weeks and 2 days. No, 1 week. Excuse me. 1 week and 2 days away. So again, I'm Laura Hart from RoboFund, robofund.org, where we help kids love to learn by using leading edge technologies such as robotics, coding, Minecraft, and animation. And we welcome you to come check us out. We're at robofund.org. We also work in about 60 schools right now in the New York City area. And we're getting ready for our big move. But in the meantime, we have lots of classes happening at 102nd and Broadway. Call us up at 212-245-0444 or go to the website at robofund.org. And thank you for listening today. Have a good day.